like it, man. All right, so the Athletic every year for the past 3 or 4 years, Mike Gill, they've been ranking Major League Baseball fans' optimism, and they've been calling it the MLB Hopometer for each team's fan base. Now, the Phillies this year, their Hopometer and optimism is at 84%, which is 12th best on their list. Last year, they ranked them at 97%. And in 2023, they ranked them at almost 99%, 98.7%. And 84% is a massive drop in what they're saying the Phillies fans and the entire city should be expecting as far as optimism and hope. So I thought that was really interesting. And I ask you, do you sigh at that? Is that something you say, why is it at 84%? There's no reason why it should be that low. Or do you take a step back and say, actually, I sort of agree with that?
So what's the hopometer?
It's at 84%. And to put it in perspective, entering last year, they had the Phillies at 97. And entering 2023, they had the Phillies at 98.8.
I'm not surprised because I think people are, this is the sad hamster wheel of the sports fan is you give players about a 2-year cycle before you're ready to kind of get them off the hamster wheel and put somebody else on. We never want to just be patient and let the team grow together. The problem with this team is they've played 3 years together. This core of Harper, Schwarber, Castellanos, Realmuto, Wheeler, Nola, Marsh, those 7 guys, Bohm, Stott, those 9 guys, really, they were all here in 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. The only guy who wasn't was Turner, and he got at it, so this is now his third go-around. At some point, the fans, yes, they start to say, I've seen this act. Okay, I've already gone to this show. You got to do something different for me, like Metallica. They're playing one show on Friday night, and then on Sunday night, they're changing the whole act. They're not doing the same act again. You got to keep it spicy, man.
You know what's crazy? Baseball's just different, obviously. But we look at basketball, and what's one negative we always bring up with the 76ers? Their core is never the same, right? The Milwaukee Bucks, we say, look at their core. That's why they won that one title. Every year, they brought back the same team. They were a cohesive unit. You say that with the NFL as well. You need to have cohesive unit. You need to have chemistry. But in baseball, it's like 2 years, same core, like old geezers. It's like, why? In baseball, it doesn't seem to matter at all. It's almost viewed as a negative.
Yeah, listen, in
Why?
baseball, well, I think because in baseball, they always say you flip over the baseball card and that's who you are. It's really rare to see a guy make the jump from hey, he's a 230 hitter. Whoa, he's a 300 hitter with 30. In baseball, you kind of become who you are. That's it. And so it's hard to envision a player making such a big jump, especially this is where the Phillies, I think, have the issue with the hopometer.
Yeah.
A lot of their players are veteran players. So their baseball cards are pretty much telling you who they are. For Nick Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto and Bryce Harper and, those guys to make big jumps after their baseball card says this is who you are, it's hard.
Yeah.
So even if they're as good as they've always been, it hasn't been good enough.
I'll say this. I'm someone that looks at, I think the best days are in the rear view with this Phillies team, and I pray that I'm wrong. But I'll add with the MLB Hopometer, they have the Phillies ranked 12th. And I'll question how many fan bases would trade to be in the Phillies spot? I would say almost every one but 3, 2, right? And to have them 12th as far as optimism is concerned, the Phillies roster is still loaded. They're still in an awesome spot. And there's still, I would say, 95% of Major League Baseball and their fans would trade with Philly. Is that fair?
Is just a different, even more so than New York. And he was a GM in New York. And he was talking about how the expectations in Philly. Here's what Steve Phillips said from the MLB Network, former Mets GM. Take a listen.
I think there's a difference between New York and Philadelphia. I do. I honestly believe that there's a whole nother level of accountability for Philly fans over Yankee fans. there's another level of expectation. And look, New York's a tough place to play. And I just think that there's a level of, it's not anger, but a level of
It is anger.
of expectation.
Yeah.
I think that Philly fans take it a little further even than Mets fans do.
Yeah, the expectation thing. Whereas like, I don't know, you're looking at Baltimore right now. Baltimore has like this young team that's been good, but like, what's the Baltimore hope-o-meter? Do you have that?
I don't have it right in front of me. I can pull it up.
Well, Baltimore's a team that has all this
New
young
York's
talent.
fourth, by the way.
Which one? New York Mets or Yankees?
Mets.
Well, they just got Soto and they're excited.
Right.
So like, and they beat the Phillies last year and they so yeah, I can understand that. But Baltimore's a team that has all this young talent, and yet they've been disappointing in the playoffs for like 3 straight seasons with all these young guys. And you're like wondering if the fan base finally says, you know what? I just don't think these young guys can get it done. It's time to like start, because they have so many young. They're like the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Baltimore is 1 behind Philly, by the way. Baltimore's 12th. The Phillies are 11th.
Baltimore is 12th. And what's their hope-o-meter percentage? I like this game, by the way.
79.8. The Phillies, it's
and
a big
gap. Do you have what Baltimore's was last year?
Let me pull it back up.
Because that team, like I said, they're like the Oklahoma City Thunder. They just have a ton of young players. Their problem has been they just don't have that top-level pitcher. All of their young talent is like offensive players.
What would you guess their Baltimore's hope-o-meter was entering last year?
90-something.
Yeah, you're in the ballpark. 98.
Yeah, because the year before they lost, but it's like our first time there. And then they went out and signed. Did they get Corbin Burns last year? I think at the top of their rotation. So they go out and get a Cy Young pitcher with their offense. You're like, this is the year.
Yeah.
Now they've lost Corbin Burns, and they're starting to lose faith that group of guys is the right group of guys, even though they're very young.
And I think, that's crazy. It's like the dynamic of baseball is so unique and different from these other sports. And it's like everyone now, including myself, it's like, well, the Phillies didn't do anything. And it's you lose hope. You lose hope just because you have this awesome core. It doesn't matter. What have they done for us lately? And it's fallen short.
It's fallen short, and I think we've talked a lot about this because we've gone through it with the Sixers, where I'll believe it when you get out of the second round of the playoffs, which the Sixers have been unable to do. They're not going to do it again. And now you're getting to that point with the Phillies, where I think the Phillies, the only thing they can do is win the World Series. They've been to a World Series. They've been to the championship round. So their problem isn't what the Orioles is, getting to the playoffs and then winning a round. The Phillies have won rounds in the playoffs. They just haven't won the biggest round.
I know we're up against it a little bit, but I want to squeeze this question in. Is the best yet to come, or are the glory days in the rear view for the Phillies?
Good question. Ooh.
I'll answer. I think, and I hate to say this, but if I'm backing myself into a corner, I think it's in the rear view.
I might not be able to argue with you on that one.
I know. And then I also say to myself, well, why? Right? Like it's a tough question.
And when you sign Turner for $300 million and Harper for his contract, you should think that, hey, we're here for the long haul. But this is a big year. If I had to answer, I think the rear view.
It's crazy. Yeah, we're on the same page
I
with
agree.
that, man.
All right.
Yeah.
That's Rye or Cy for this day. We'll see you again tomorrow, man. Happy Hour Friday.